June.
I went to all my brother's games. We were twins, so like. Figured out. It's fine. It's team. Put the T on the bottom of the team. Right?
Okay, we will come to order, please. Hello and welcome. It's April 28th. SBAC meeting. First order of business is adoption of the minutes from last week. Is there a motion to accept?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Thank you,
I
April.
wasn't here, so I wasn't gonna, but I did watch the meeting and read the minutes, so we're good. I was gonna let somebody else go.
Any discussion? If everybody had a chance to review those minutes, all good? Okay, all in favor of accepting as written? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And with that, we will, I need a motion to, I will make a motion to adjourn into executive session.
To return to the public session. To return to the public session.
Yeah.
Yes, second.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Was that, were you opposed? Oh, okay. Your hand was just late to come down. I was like, oh. All right, with that, then we will adjourn and return to public session at 7 p.m.
Perfect.
So our next agenda item is where we are in the process.
Just trying to get into
Okay,
balance.
no problem.
Oh, I am now. Thank you.
Can you, while you're up there, Emily, could you also make Anna Lee a panelist? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I should be able to. Okay. Here's the agenda. We'll move on over the process.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right, so where we are in the process, this should be a very familiar slide at this point. We are in between the preferred options and the supported option, collecting input from community as well as other stakeholders. And a more detailed look, you can see exactly where we are on the 28th here. We have our community forum this Wednesday. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. And you'll see later on, we're going to say it many times throughout this presentation, bring a minimum of 5. They could be friends, they can be neighbors, they could be acquaintances, whomever, bring 5 people. And try to get as many folks in the community continually educated on where you're at in the process. In May, we'll be meeting 3 times, the 5th, the 12th, and the 19th. What happens that 4th Monday is a holiday. Otherwise, we probably would have met then as well. I was looking at this today with Emily, and just it's shocking how many meetings we've had, but there aren't that many left to get us to a vote for an option. So the beginning of June is when you'll have detail on those 2 options, costs, drawings, all of that. So that is about a month away. Just hopefully you all recognize all the hard work that you've done to get us here, and we'll continue to get a lot done over the next month and a half, and then it's all about communication. All right, so going into the detailed look ahead, April, May, we're wrapping up April this week and headed into May. The survey goes out tomorrow. The communication committee is going to walk us through that. And that is out between April 29th and May 12th. This is a shorter time period than the last one, just due to maintaining the schedule. But we're going to communicate this well. I know there's a lot of communication going on about it right now. And I don't want to steal any more of the communication committee's thunder. So I'll let them update you on that. Again, the forum on the 30th, we meet again on the 5th, which is next Monday. The goal is to have costs back from our estimator to review with you on one of the 2 options. That would be the Alt B3, which is the larger K2 option with the Wentworth and middle school as well. The survey will close on the 12th. And then we will meet on the 12th, and we hope to have back cost information on option ABA. And at that point, we'll go through that information. We have broken these staggered these so that we can get into conversations on each of these, knowing that we'll present it at one meeting and probably have follow-up questions at the next as well. And then on the 16th, the following week, we should have the survey results back and plan to distribute those to folks so we can get into a detailed discussion about that. And then review those survey results and discuss reduction of options on the 19th. That will take us into June. Beginning of June is where we will have pretty much deliver to you guys concept design for the 2 options. And that entails a site plan, floor plans, exterior massing, so you can kind of see the forms of the buildings, elevations and a detailed project cost. So that's essentially the estimate plus the detail of all the soft costs. And then that will be, you'll have a meeting with the town council and the school board on the 5th. Last day of school is on the 13th, and then we will meet again on the 16th. And that is when you are to vote to reduce to one supported solution and provide any direction to us with any further refinements before you present again to the joint town council or the joint town council school board on the 26th. Sounds simple, right? It's
It's all right there.
all right there. It is not simple. All right.
I just had one question.
Yeah.
Are we doing any deeper dive on the cost of the scope reduction options, or are those simple enough that we didn't need to?
I don't know that, I mean, I think through these meetings in May, any questions that you have about that, we can dive in deeper on that. But essentially we will have costs both middle school options. So you'll have that.
Okay, as a
reduction
comparison,
As a
okay.
comparison. Other than that, it's pretty much removing scope
Right.
for those others. Any other questions on where we're at and look ahead? I will turn it over to you, Charlie.
And I will turn it right over to the communications committee.
All right, so big week ahead, guys. There was an excellent article in this, what is it called, Scarborough Now, the Scarborough Now newsletter that went out last Thursday, helping to promote both the forum coming up and the survey. But as Lisa just said, the survey is going live tomorrow. And it is a robust survey. We're asking people to consider a lot of information, to consider the two plans themselves, to consider the tax impact, the project costs, and the staffing costs, and also the scope reductions, and to consider the trade-offs, and what are you giving up if you want to consider the scope reduction. So it's live tomorrow, and we are doing a lot of digital media marketing, Facebook ads, email campaigns, town newsletter, any newsletter we can get this in. But also, we are looking to the committee to help us get the word out and to actually do some door-to-door canvassing. We did not send out a postcard this time based on the issues that the Postal Service was having. We didn't think it was an effective use of our resources. So now we're leaning on you guys. Jillian's gonna tell you how it works.
Yeah, so actually Leroy made up a bunch of packets based on neighborhoods. There's 20 there and there just happen to be 20 in that. So it works out that way. So everybody yep, April's holding one up.
I already swooped in on mine. Sorry, y'all.
Yep, I know, I'm coming in.
There is a sign out sheet. So there are 50 packets there, and they also come with this plans out, which has a little bit more information on the back. So there's 2 handouts to give people. There's also some plastic bags for hanging on doors or mailboxes. They can't go in mailboxes legally. I think, it's like a federal crime.
Don't do it. Do not put them in people's mailboxes.
Could be a problem.
Don't,
But, yeah, so anybody who's willing to do, there's 50 there, there's more, we can get you more as you need them. Reach out to Leroy or me. And that's it. So it has the whole printout here. It's like a devil's 4 pages, so really nice.
a lot of information, and people kind of need to understand this before they can really answer the survey questions, right? And, this information is built into the survey, but that's a lot to sort of, get through the phone. So the more people who have this, better off they're gonna be. This goes inside and it promotes the survey. It's got QR codes so they can actually find the survey, and then information about cost and tax impact. So stick that in there, stick it in a little plastic baggie and hang it in the doorknob or the mailbox. It's just not inside the building.
This is the sign up sheet
That's the sign up
for the areas. So this is right back here on this table for those that want to sign up. We already have a couple folks that have signed up, so.
I mean, if there's more than one person in an area, there's more than 50 houses in every area, so we can split up, just coordinate with somebody that is in that location. 'Cause the
Feel free to
areas.
rope some friends into it. It doesn't have
Yes,
to be just you by
absolutely.
yourself.
Your
Right.
kids,
Send the
right?
kids out. Yeah.
Oh, you don't know my kids are doing this.
Yep, yep. Bribe them, whatever you have
And so when do you want people to
You
get
wanna
them
use those
outside?
electric scooters? Bye.
Yeah, so, I mean, how soon do we want them out? I mean,
ASAP.
hey, the survey starts tomorrow, so get them out, but I think, you know, keep, you know, do it through the weekend. Just keep through the week. You know, survey's open until May 12th. We want them all out before May 12th. How about that? But yeah, I mean, the sooner the better, and if you can do more than 50, please do more than 50, because, you know, there are 10,000 households in Scarborough.
Yeah, if you're down at Peterson, those parking lots are packed and those windshields are bare.
Yes. Absolutely. We can always print more, we can get more plastic bags, anything you need.
Tom, will you have the mailbox out front?
Yes.
Okay, so just like last time, which we were slow to think of it, but I think that it was a great idea to put the mailbox out front for anybody who wants to return a paper copy.
Oh, I forgot to say paper copy, the same places as last time, town hall and the library.
Okay, so we'll make sure, thank you,
As soon as
Tom, for doing
tomorrow?
that.
Those
As
are
soon as
gonna be
tomorrow?
printed
That'd be great.
tomorrow, because we just received literally hot off the press, the latest changes from marketing decisions this afternoon. So my staff will start printing the paper surveys tomorrow morning
And
when they
if
come
you,
in.
if you speak to anyone who wants to take a paper survey, make sure they know that those are due May 9th, not May 12th.
And all of you do have a copy of the paper survey, so, you know, certainly, you can fill this one out, or if you want to give it to someone else, who would like to fill out a paper copy, you know, this was just kind of, you know, this could serve a dual purpose, one, for you to preview so that you know what it looks like, but certainly, feel free to fill it out.
And both the pickup of these and the drop off is town hall and the library.
Last time, also in the 11th hour, I made a video that Allison posted to the town social. Is that something that people would be interested in me doing again?
Absolutely.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'll shoot it tomorrow.
So the packets that we're supposed to deliver to people
Yes.
are just that brochure that has,
This brochure,
okay,
yep, it's an informational brochure, and then you'll see they're organized in stacks over there, and then these additional flyers that are printed out.
And they have the
that have
QR
the QR code.
got it.
And
Yep.
It's really to make sure people know the survey is out there, because we lost the leader.
And maybe not to be confused, on the 11x17, there was a QR code that goes to the project website for more info, so maybe
Yeah.
bring that to people's attention.
If they go to the project site, is there?
They'll be
the
able
code
to
to
check
Pop up for
survey?
the survey.
So,
I think either way. Yeah, that's a good question, Larry.
Is Brian doing a pop-up
Yeah,
with the
it's
link
already
to the
on.
survey? Yep,
One up.
perfect.
these are dated ones.
Yep.
Anything else? Elizabeth, Jillian?
No, that's it. We have a bunch of signs around town that are blowing over, so if anybody sees one, please stop. and pick it up.
Are they the sandwich boards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
interesting. Different sandwich boards and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
I have some idea.
So you can weight them down.
Yeah, we're gonna try a few things.
You guys, tremendous effort. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah,
And
really,
thank you
really
for
good.
coordinating,
Thanks so much.
like,
Thanks.
takes a village. Guys,
You're
everybody
part
grab
of
a packet, be part of it,
I'm
help.
working around the
Yeah.
clock, I just need to say, I can attest to that.
Everyone's in.
I know, I don't want to know what the timestamps on those emails are, Diane.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you so much.
Yes,
Yes, took forever. Kept saying it wouldn't, waiting for you to let me in.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
So I can't get the video on. I keep clicking on it, so I'm not hiding.
no, we
We can
we
see
can
you.
hear
We
you.
can see you.
It doesn't sound like she can hear us.
Maybe she can hear us.
Or see us, yeah.
I can hear you, so.
You didn't hear, people with you in the background or?
No, I don't. All I see on my screen is my initials in an orange circle.
All right. So are you able?
So from the BCLT, as far as the community forum goes, as was already mentioned, that's this Wednesday. The purpose of the agenda, the purpose of the community forum will mostly be to, another avenue to inform folks of, really it'll follow along the same lines as a survey. We'll talk about the options, get their feedback, talk about some scope reduction and tax impact, and let the discussion go where it may. So that's Wednesday. I unfortunately am not available for that, so thank you, Larry, for taking the con on that one. And then the only other thing from us was this email discussion that had happened around the tax impact model and the interest rate. So I'll just open the floor for a few minutes if there's any further discussion or conversation around that topic.
We have it on this slide. I put it.
Oh, you do have a slide in there? Okay, then I think we'll just hold on that then, if that's okay, and we'll just get,
It's the next slide in the deck.
oh, here we go.
Perfect.
All right.
The information's there.
So anyways, Sue, I'll let you you summarized it well in the email. I think you had some concerns around the interest rate.
Yeah, so I found out that Cape Elizabeth is using 4%, and we're using 3.5%. And when I ran the numbers today for 30-year bond, it is closer to whatever I said in the email, with the data, for today, 4 point something. And yes, if you do a 10-year, 5, 10, 15, it's shorter term and it's a lower rate. And that is what we got in February. It kind of jives with that because we had a bond issue in February that was 20-year max. I mean, a lot of it was 15, some of it was 10, some of it was 5. And we got a rate in the 3s. So
3.25 to be exact.
So it does appear that it makes sense that a longer term bond is riskier and it's going to be a higher rate. And I think our obligation on running these numbers so that people can see what their tax impact would be is to be conservative. And I'm glad that we had an upgrade in our rating, but I feel that 4% is we've got to be at least at 4%. It's not my decision, so.
That's a quick question.
What is that?
Go ahead, you go. No. What have we had a Moody's credit rating done recently, and do we know where we're?
Yes, just in February.
Okay, it might have been an email and I just didn't see it. So we
Yeah, we
know
did
where
get
we're
an
at.
upgrade with Moody's, so we're investment grade
Okay,
and have been, but we're one grade short of AAA.
okay, nice.
And Cape Elizabeth has a slightly higher rating than what we have, and they're using 4%. Doesn't mean we have to use 4, but I feel like to be conservative, worst case, and we could very well wind up at who knows what interest rates will do. And certainly the bond isn't going out for quite a while. So, but if it were to go out today, it is likely that it would come in the 4.6. AAA is 4.6 for a 30-year.
I simply don't agree that that's a reasonable estimate. These are very complicated, very nuanced. So I've been asked for my professional opinion. I've solicited input from my professional staff and I provided it to you. The model is intentionally set up to change the assumptions at the stroke of the key. If the committee wishes to do that, we'll certainly rerun the model based on those new parameters. Just to keep in mind, this model, it is an estimate. It is based on assumptions throughout. And so, we could have a philosophical discussion around any one of these. I certainly agree with the point that we ought to be conservative, but I think we also ought to be realistic. And we've got very good recent example of going to the bond market. And one of the unique things about Scarborough, certainly compared to Cape Elizabeth, and Sue has raised this since I first met her, that Scarborough has and has always carried a significant amount of debt. The good news with that is that we've created a strong profile in the market. We've built that structurally into our operating budgets so that we can absorb tax rates increases from bond issues much easier. Cape Elizabeth, on the other hand, chooses to be relatively debt-free. So when they take on a big debt issue, it is a huge shock to the system. Just another simple fact, it's really hard to compare communities, but I think our fiscal profile is extremely strong comparatively in spite of the bond ratings. For example, their top 10 taxpayers are 3/4 of our single top taxpayer. That sort of distribution of your tax base is really important. So I don't want to debate this. I don't think it's worth it. If you wish to go to 4%, we'll certainly make that change.
I mean, the surveys are printed and basically at the press with the 3.7, what did we use on it?
3.5.
3.5, thank you. So for what it's worth, just for discussion, that's what's already out to the public for their tax impact understanding. So if, with that being said, if somebody wants to introduce a motion to remodel it with a different interest rate, we could certainly entertain it that way and go through, but otherwise I think we'll move on. No motion? Okay. Thanks.
The next topic we got on here was, we were asked to provide information on off-street, on-street.
Yeah, so,
or the-
old business on the tabled motion from last week. Again, sorry for the parliamentarians. I know we're supposed to do old business first. So we will reopen the motion on the table to incorporate street parking and relook at the site layouts for Blue Point and Pleasant Hill. And I think that what we were waiting for was some information back from Harriman around some of the costs and things like that.
So we provided some costs. I think maybe Tom, you were looking at stuff as well. And maybe I had that wrong, but we provided generally what it would be per square foot of off-street and on-street. You can see that on the slide up here. Essentially, the off-street is less dollars per square foot. Really that, and when we say off-street, it's like on the site that the school is, just so people understand, on the street is when you're parking on the street and not on the site that the school is for this example. The on-street is generally more costly due to the increase in pavement. And I'll really let John speak to that.
Yeah, so typically when you're providing on-street parking, municipal ordinances require a thicker pavement section than a parking lot. A parking lot might require 3 inches of pavement, whereas like a Route 1 or a road that sees heavier traffic might require 4 or 5 inches. So right off the bat, your pavement costs are going to be increased. But really what the cost driver, when I started looking at some bid tabulations for municipal projects around Maine, was it's slower production and really the utility costs for relocating water lines, sewer lines, overhead utility poles. And contractors would always prefer to work on a private site without having to deal with traffic control. Their production is much more efficient, much quicker than having to deal with flaggers, and they're able to do more feet of road, more footage of pipe on a daily basis. So cost within an existing roadway is generally, and maybe Tom can chime in as well, is always more costly than doing construction on a private site that has the ability to maneuver, to come in and out freely, and to be able to essentially have free reign of a site to be able to build a off-street parking lot to do on-street parking.
Yeah, forgive me, I haven't had time to engage my staff in any detail. Just we've been distracted on other matters. Elizabeth knows we're tearing up a road in Black Point Road. But generally speaking, the whole notion of this, I think, makes a lot of sense. In fact, we've kind of embraced a lot of these concepts. Certainly, from a traffic calming point of view, there's some benefits. I do, from past experience, do appreciate many of the points that John raises, particularly for utility relocation. There's huge cost, often time complications associated with that as well. As manager, I also think about it's going to change the nature of that neighborhood, perhaps for the better. But in any event, this is something that we would want to engage the neighborhood in fully. That's more process than anything. With more time, we can certainly provide more input on it, but I think John's hit the high points.
Just as a question for discussion, like when we're looking at Pleasant Hill or Blue Point, and we're talking about, for the purpose of this discussion, relocating 42 parking spaces. What is that in distance?
A typical parking space is 18 feet long, so 42 times 18 is
Do the math on 20. It's easy.
20, 840 feet. Okay, 800 feet.
So how does that equate to like? Again, like I'm not thinking about like mileage.
Right, I'm trying to picture if we were to
Right.
relocate
How far
40
down would
spaces
that
along
go?
Pine Point Road, like how far north and south of Blue
Right.
Point would those parking spaces?
Or on Highland
extend?
Avenue.
Or on Highland Avenue,
156.
Presumably, they would be on the same side of the street as the school. for
Right.
Safety, reduce the need for crossing. I think you'd have to take into account the side streets. I think it's Eagle Nest is that the
Yeah.
road? Just
Yeah.
above the
Yeah.
point? It doesn't have to be, but I presume that would be a logical starting point, and you'd run it 800 feet the opposite direction. I suspect that takes you down in front of Bailey's ice cream, Bailey's ice cream or so.
At least.
And there's private homes there that, though we
Right.
probably have adequate right of way, there's impacts and such that would need to be
Yeah.
considered.
So I think it's like 40 in general, but it's only 18 at Blue Point. I think it's 30 at Pleasant.
I did talk with
fewer.
the town engineer. We have to consider what being the school sidewalk, which is 4 to 6 feet. Bicycle path because of the,
Streets.
yes. And then, she told me a 8 by 20 length for an automobile.
Yeah.
And that would be tight, opening the door out in the traffic.
Is there a possibility of nosing cars in and orienting them that way? Or is there not adequate land?
You're talking about diagonal parking? Having-
Yeah, as opposed to parallel. to the
That
street.
works in low speed areas. The thought of backing a car into a travel lane essentially, I think would be frowned upon, probably not allowed. I'm thinking Pine Point Road in particular, but Pleasant Hill, I think, is probably a similar situation.
And that's even more property that you're
Right,
impacting.
right.
And are concerned with Highland Avenue is whether or not they have enough right of way to accommodate on-street parking.
Right.
On one
but that-
side, you got the houses that are up high. They have to be sloped such. They may have to move the water, sewer, to get it below the cross line. So Highland Avenue could be expensive to put parking on.
Well, and if it doesn't have the width, then there might need to be some land taken from landowners, correct?
I mean, if we didn't have the right of way, I also just. In the public opinion, if we were to claim right of way on people's front yards, that they're gonna view that as taking their front yard, whether that's what we're doing or not, that is how that's gonna feel to those
Mhm.
homeowners.
And it's unpopular.
It's gonna be wildly unpopular.
Yeah, I mean, we know this.
I think I can safely
We
say.
know this because we saw this in the last referendum, right? When a neighborhood that was going to be affected had very strong opinions.
That even more recently with the Gorham connector cutting through, there's a lot of negative feedback to taking. He's part of Smiling.
Just the other cost to keep in mind, I think Pleasant Hill in particular, but probably true of Blue Point. Once you create a curb line, in this case, we would need a curb to create a safe refuge for pedestrians. Then you're into stormwater because you're catching and directing stormwater. So it does get complicated and potentially expensive. I appreciate the sentiment of the
That's
suggestion.
why, I mean, and again, like, you know, I thank you for the clarification that it's not 42 at Pine Point Road, that matters. I have an easier time picturing it there, honestly, than I do Highland, because Highland's just so tight, but the other thing that I know came up was just the maintenance of that sidewalk too. School has to be open, you know, those sidewalks and stuff would have to be ready in order for parents to arrive, and that's just one more kind of thing that we would have to look at on the town side, whether or not we were equipped to even perform those services at 3 a.m. And it can all be done with money and time, right? Where's Todd?
So it sounds to me, right, like from this discussion, that street parking is a tough ask, right? But I think the spirit of the motion, and obviously this would be a different motion, but I think what you're really trying to get to is save space on the lots for playground fields and school building.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for asphalt parking. Right? So maybe, you know, if this motion doesn't pass, and I'm not trying to presume any votes, but could there be other compromises around the parking lots? You know, maybe we don't hit the exact, you know, number of spots that, you know, you'd need. I'm just sort of thinking out loud, like, are there other ways to try to get after this problem to make those lots a little bit more, you know, usable for school purposes rather than just parking, although parking matters, right? It impacts people's experience, whether they're staff or parents. So, I don't know.
I'm sure it's a huge expense to change the way the drainage happens at Pleasant Hill, making it parking lot and having underground storm drainage. Sounds like an expensive undertaking, but it would buy space if it were a possibility.
James, I suspect you're ahead of your time. At some point, these schools will need to be expanded again, and we'll probably be forced at that time if we want to do something on those sites to find a way to increase footprint of buildings or additional play space. But I really question whether now is the time to be able to take that off.
I mean, I hear you guys, I disagree. I think the big thing is when you look at the surveys that all come out, it's for neighborhood schools. Why? Because that's the only parks in the neighborhoods. When you ask for transportation, what do people want? They want more sidewalks, they want more bikeways. This is the type of neighborhoods that people want. And when it comes down to it, it's like, oh, we really don't care, we're not doing that. And it's like, well, this is a trade-off you have to make. Sometimes it's a little new and a little uncomfortable, maybe a little bit more expensive, but this is the places that people want to live.
I totally hear what you're saying. I just think that for the however many dozen people that you're asking to make that sacrifice, people are gonna have strong feelings about whether or not asking those 12 people, and I'm throwing out, I have no idea how many actual people it is. You know, that's where I struggle with it, is I agree with you. If it was just a cost issue and we were talking about, you know, doing something that was more expensive, I would be in favor. But it's more just this idea that it is really gonna impact people's actual homes that I struggle with.
is there a way to not have it be the parking you're trying to achieve, but have it be the sidewalks and bike lanes you're trying to achieve? Where that's already part of a town initiative to do that where possible, but I'm just thinking that might be an easier way to, less expensive way than actual creating the parking, moving utility poles, all that, where as you, particularly around the schools that we're renovating, if there's not really road improvements contemplated at all, right? But if there's a way to improve the walking and biking accessibility to the schools without having the parking function to it, which sounds like is what is complicating a lot of it.
Yeah, and James is right, the surveys have been overwhelming, and because of that, we've invested in a transportation plan, which gave a lot of time and attention to this issue. This year, in front of the council, the budget is a trails and sidewalk plan, so it can really be thoughtful and conscious about where we're investing to connect destinations, if you will. So we're on the cusp of doing that. Whether this is the right time, the right place to do it is the question.
One thing I thought of before we had today's meeting was, I was looking at Powderhorn Drive in relation to Pleasant Hill School. And there's a right of way that all the kids in that neighborhood use. Even my kid who doesn't live, we don't live in Pleasant Hill, but our kids went there and like half the time my kid will get off the bus and I'll pick him up there. But there's a line of parents picking up their kids at Powderhorn and there's a little right of way. Is there a way to make better use of that so that the orientation of Pleasant Hill can somewhat be more oriented towards the neighborhood? And because I see that as a right of way, I just don't know. When you look at it, it looks like someone's property, but I mean, can we make better use of that so that Pleasant Hill looks a little bit more like a neighborhood school?
And that's the proposals. I think it's town land that connects Pleasant Hill to Powderhorn.
It looks like it, but it doesn't look like it when you're in the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's just trees, I bet.
It just looks like a right of way, or it looks like someone's property. But if it's town property, we should make better use of that. For probably little cost.
Like what?
We've been cutting through there since 1986.
Yeah, maybe a back entrance of the school property or something like that. Maybe like a properly mowed, maybe even like a school sign on Powderhorn.
So I'm familiar with the Pleasant Hill neighborhood only from Highland. I'm looking at Google Earth right now. I'm not seeing the right of way.
You won't see it. So look at the town GIS and then zoom in on Pleasant Hill. And what you'll see is the Pleasant Hill lot. And on Powderhorn, you'll see like a little rectangular jut out that goes towards the school.
Okay.
Isn't that where we're contemplating, like that is the land that is owned by the school that we're contemplating needing to tear the trees down so we can have a playground?
I don't know.
It's close to it.
It's probably in that area. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so the trees that you see there and that like, there's like a path and there's a gate that's always open.
Yep.
Is that where you mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Like that is going to be where the new playground would be situated.
It looks like it, yeah.
Because we're losing the playground space that we currently have due to the addition.
Yeah, there's a big hill right here.
Yeah.
I don't know
It's
how
like right
playgrounds
there.
are going there.
No.
Google Earth so you can see it.
Well, you can't see it on the issue.
I can tell you.
The tree, yeah, I know, I was just looking at it.
Yeah, that's okay.
So
The neighbors would
so
love
this is
that,
what
but
the
yeah, I
school
see what
is.
you're talking about. There is,
Right now, in cameras.
So you're gonna reorient.
well, that's on satellite view, it looks like you're right next to that guy's driveway, but I see where it is.
Yeah, I know. It
Um,
wasn't like that.
There is a
right next to it, yeah.
I would tell them.
Yeah.
that little right of way that I'm talking about, entirely flat.
Yeah. I see that.
Yeah, people go run. Right here, so that's
John's on
the
the other side of the-
fire station right here,
Okay.
Highland Avenue.
Yeah.
Highland Middle School, that little right away. And then this is Howard Park.
Oh, yeah.
Is there,
Okay.
is there any other discussion on this motion?
This is a start.
If not, I'll call the vote.
What's the motion?
Yeah, can we just
Yeah.
clarify the motion?
Yep, I've got that up. So it's a motion to better integrate neighborhood school options into the surrounding neighborhoods through the use of street parking, essentially, street parkings and sidewalks. And it applies to both Pleasant Hill and Blue Point. A yes vote means that you're voting to redesign the sites and incorporate the street parking and the sidewalks. A no vote means that we will continue with our existing designs as they are. With that, Larry,
No.
Leroy,
No.
James, Tom Escher, he's not online.
Oh,
Fred,
no.
Are you gonna go to
To leave the.
Mike for?
oh yeah. Mike is here. Great. Mike,
No.
Paul, is Paul online?
No.
Nope. Alternate 2 is not here. Okay. Sue,
No.
Dave,
Yes.
Jenna?
No.
Bill?
No.
Carrie?
No.
Charlie's a no. Alyssa?
No.
Jim?
No.
Annalee? Not on. April?
No.
Ava?
No.
Jillian? Elizabeth?
You skipped me.
How did that happen? It's okay. No, you're a no. So that is 16-2 with 2 abstentions. Motion fails.
Not abstentions, just.
Absences. Thank you.
Yep, no worries.
All right, with that, then, next item for discussion is design updates.
Awesome. So fairly brief design updates. The major thing are the operating costs. The big piece of that is staffing costs that Diane has gone through. Provided space allocation workbooks to her for that. So we have that in, and then we also did utility costs for the K2. And that's what the staffing cost looks at as well. And then there are some floor plan updates on a couple of the floor plans, just based on some of the back and forth on some of the programming into the schools. So the first slide up is staffing, and so I'll pass it over to you, Diane.
Yeah, and we actually have a handout for you, Ray, and I pulled some things together this afternoon to provide you with a little bit more information than just the overall cost. But as you can see from the slide, not surprisingly, there are savings in staffing costs by consolidating. This is based on FY 26 estimated wages and benefits. And, you know, again, this isn't necessarily an exact science, because we are estimating out, you know, that these are schools that are fully loaded. And we're estimating out what we think the special education services are going to be. As you know, we've talked with you in previous meetings about, knowing those special education numbers are really hard to know in advance. And so we're basing those kind of on, what our current scenarios are. We also provided you with a breakdown of the savings, in terms of professional staff versus support staff. That would be, people under contract versus, hourly wage earners. And you can see how that breaks out. You know, we did not adjust for inflation, and do those things as, you know, as Tom's staff, has the ability to do, because that is not our area of expertise, and certainly I don't want to entertain putting some numbers that I don't feel solid about. But, you know, even at today's cost, over 30 years, that is $79 million more to have neighborhood schools, or $79 million less not to, depending on how you look at that. I know that the communications committee did ask Tom to have his staff estimate out what that would mean in property taxes each year if there was an annual savings of $2.6 million. And his staff estimated that for a typical $600,000 home, that would be $190 to $200 less in property taxes each year. And, you know, this information, just in terms of that cost, trends very well with the business case that we did for the 2023 referendum, when the projected staffing costs were a difference of $2.4 million. And so, you know, that was 2 years ago. So as we all understand, you know, wages and benefits change over time. And so this is quite consistent. We also provided you just some of the overall categories in terms of areas of impact, in terms of where there is more staff needed when you have neighborhood schools, and the roles in which that is, or where there is less staff needed when you consolidate. So I know this is a piece of information that people have been asking about for some time, and happy to be able to provide that for you.
All right, thank you, Diane. So that was staffing. The next one is a very dense slide on utilities. We looked at the K2 as well. The first chart up there really looked at the operating costs using traditional systems, and in that really fine print, it will explain what traditional systems are for anybody that has questions about that, and we can load that up too. But and it also explains any of the assumptions made. But what this shows is for option ABA, which are the 3 neighborhood K2 schools, we're looking at using this current year, $317,000 for operating costs. And then if we look at option B3, which is the K2 consolidated schools, so that's about $261,000 in this current year. And then we also look at it in 2028 and 2029. So you're seeing a difference of about, you know, for this current year, $56,000 in utility operating costs. And it increases there over the years. We also, just because there was in many of the estimates, we had shown a cost for geothermal, but just to show the difference in operating costs, that's what that second chart shows. And so it essentially shows if you were to do a geothermal at the new schools, the small K2 or the larger K2, essentially what the difference would be for those. So in the smaller K2, again, we look just at the new schools with the geothermal, it would be a savings of $58,000 per year, and the larger K2 about $125,000 per year in savings in comparison to a traditional system. So those are really the operating costs for the K2 schools and the two options. Any questions on operating costs?
Yeah, I'd say some of this is hard to believe. So I think on operating costs, we talked about upgrading the envelopes so that we get better insulation. And we thought, oh, what would it take to actually make that better? But actually, when you see it doesn't improve it operating costs at all in terms of heating or cooling.
In what way?
Well, you can take the current year costs where they obviously don't have.
So current year, as in like, if we were to take this design and operate it today.
Yeah, and then if you look in 2028, after you upgrade the envelopes, it's actually the same cost.
So it's.
Those aren't
it
actual
with-
costs.
So these are all approximated costs, including including the envelope upgrades. Like, let's say, using today's dollars, when we say current year, it's using today's dollars. So if you were to make that whole new design, what it would cost to run today, that new design with the upgrades made.
Okay.
That would be that current year.
Okay, so what did you guys factor in terms of heating and cooling efficiency? And like what is actually the gain from upgrading the envelope?
So we're looking with the assumption that the envelope is upgraded to current IECC 2021, so the insulation values as well as the windows, we approximated the 20% savings.
Yeah, and when this was done for the 2023 referendum, we weren't contemplating insulating the primary schools at that time. And I think the difference was closer to the $300,000 range. And so I was expecting this to be a much tighter number, knowing the changes that were in, that are being considered in this project versus in the last project.
I think that's what's also tough is like, if you go back to that FY23 business proposal, like 4-school option was 200 million. And now we're looking at more like 140. So it's like a big change. It was 600K to heat and cool, and now it's 300K.
There was 4 schools.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Three.
But actually the staffing costs have gone up. So previously we looked at manning 4 schools and it was 2.4, it's 40 staff difference. And now it's actually 3 schools with 1 less grade and it's still gone up to 2.6. I don't know, it seems like the business proposal in 23 was like really bloated for the 4-school option and everything's come down except for the staff.
No, I mean, I haven't looked at it recently. We're just basing this off of what the data was, and we based off the data at the time then. Some of the things that I think she's mentioned in regards to staffing is the changing in programming. And so special ed and all of those things have changed in comparison to that. But you also have to understand that was a 4-school versus a 1, and this is a 3 versus a 1. So things are going to change. They were different designs. So there's a lot of different factors in regards to that.
How many additional staff do we need for 3 versus 1? It was like 40 and 23. Is it like 30 to 40 now, or do you know, Diane?
I don't have a total number like off the top of my head. We looked at it again, because as you go through all of this and you're looking at, each specific role and comparing, I have 4 sets of spreadsheets, 4 different schools. And again, you can see it's not every single role, right? And we also didn't include in here the fact that there are savings to be achieved for classroom positions, right? Jen and I were just talking today about class sizes for next year and that the problem that gets presented in a small school, right? Because if you have 3 classes, then you have 14 kids in a class. And if you have 4 classes, then the opposite, right? You have 4 classes, you have 14, you have 3 classes, you have 19 or 20. There's no sweet spot. If you were in a bigger school, you can actually distribute that. And I didn't build that into that calculation, right? So we try to be very conservative in our estimates and look at those larger things like special education, when we talk about our self-contained classrooms and being able to have those all in one site, and other special education staff that support that on one site. We need less physical education staff, less school counselors, fewer nurses, because there's one nurse in each of our neighborhood schools and 2 nurses in our bigger schools. You need different types of building leadership. We don't need 3 principals in one school. You would need some assistant principals, but that would change. You don't need 3 principal secretaries when you only have 1 principal. You don't need the same amount of educational technicians, because if you have special education programming, there's more ability to share staffing across classrooms if you have 6 or 8 special education classrooms versus 2 in this school and 2 in this school and 2 in this school. Same thing with custodians, maintenance, and, we also had to, add in some food drivers, because these schools would all need to have food trucked in, and at, upwards of 850 students, it is not enough to have 1 truck on the road delivering all breakfasts and all lunches. We would have to have 2 sets of those folks. So, those are the major categories that were impacted.
Dan, this is kind of about what I expected.
Mhm.
The only surprise to me is that I thought there might be some efficiencies in transportation with a single school. I noticed you don't have that.
There may be, again, we don't have a location,
Fair.
right? And I think that,
Yep.
we had actually included, and the communications committee decided to take it off of our flyer, that there is the potential savings for transportation. In a consolidated school model, we could have a K-5 bus run we could, have a K-5 bus run versus, our current scenario where we have very few K-5 bus runs. That's pretty consistent with our past project, where, we had considered the ability to have fewer bus stops, on a bus, because I could pick up your 1st grader and your 4th grader at the same time. As a parent, that might be more convenient for you, because you wouldn't have 2 sets of bus pickup times, et cetera. But, because we haven't had the ability to work that through, because we don't have a specific location, so we can't run it through our GIS. That is something that, we can certainly provide more information on later, once we have more detail about, what we're looking at for an option and what we're looking at for location.
Thank you.
Other questions? We'll move on to plans. So the next, I think, 3 slides are revisions to the new K2 for the 840 students, new K2 for the 3, I'm gonna say 80, might be just off, and Blue Point. And really the changes are mostly in special education. And this came about in reviewing in great detail the space allocation workbooks as we're doing the staffing. So there are changes to special education in this floor plan, as well as the smaller K2 and Blue Point. And so those are the major changes that occurred in those 3 plans. Oops, and that has the renovation there. And then that takes us to discussion block.
Discussion, any comments, questions on anything we saw today, or anything else that you've been lingering in your minds? Sue?
Sorry.
That's good.
So it seems like we're just going forward with the 133 million. And yes, there's a possibility of making some modifications based on possibly not doing the Wentworth edition. And then the 2 or 3 variations of what we're thinking about at the middle school. But there's nothing else regarding any of the other buildings or renovations or anything. I mean, it is what it is. We're not gonna try to find other ways to save money.
I would say once the detailed estimate comes in, we're gonna look through that with fine tooth comb, see if there's anything else. I mean, until we have that information, those are the big things that can be identified until you have the detail.
I mean, I've been looking at this with that same kind of, right? A little bit of trepidation of going to referendum at 130, right? Understanding that that's the high end, and personally, I've not found like major things that I'm like, yeah, I'd be willing to cut that from the project. So I'm not
I mean,
sure.
I guess in my mind, I'm thinking that what would the community who doesn't have as much money and as much ability to borrow, and if they said, we have 100 million, we cannot go 1 penny higher. And so we need to design to that. We'd have a different design. I mean, we would do something. We would find a way to come up with something, and it wouldn't be as great as this. Like, it wouldn't have everything.
You'd have to reduce the scope, which those options we've laid out show scope reductions to bring it within that. I mean, if you add all those up, you would get it down to.
But those are, I mean, basically that's dealing with the middle school, as, you know, like most of the cost options are it's the $40 million for the middle school. And 2.3 or 3.1, whatever it is for Wentworth. That's it.
There's, I think in the survey, isn't there another option that shows?
41 million would be doing nothing, right, on middle school, right? And then there's,
So that would bring you below your 100.
the cafeteria.
Right.
Situation, right?
So I mean, that's how you get, you either have to reduce square footage or reduce scope. I mean, when we get the detailed estimate, it's gonna be, we're looking for anything that we can, but there's nothing in here that is different than any, school building, around. It's literally driven by square footage and what it costs per square foot to build school.
No, I understand that, but I mean, and you've outlined where in Pleasant Hill and Blue Point, there will be major versus minor renovations. Well, can we remove all the, like if we're replacing carpeting or there's gotta be stuff.
Well, we've identified in the middle school where you can take some of that out, and when these smaller schools and we're doing so much renovation, I mean, you'd have like sections of floor that are missing. So sometimes it's made, the determination is made, well, if you have to cut across that hallway because we have plumbing and things like that going back and forth to the bathrooms, we have to replace some of that. So we're trying to be as economical as possible. And I think when we have that detailed estimate, we'll be able to see if there's any additional things, but major things are gonna be based on some of these big scope reductions.
Are we still, I know it's not in the survey, but I'm under the impression we're still contemplating a choice around air conditioning in the primary schools, right?
I believe that's what's.
That is in the survey, right?
Everybody has it, part of them is second to last two.
Yeah, this page is, so page 24, that's all of the permits, and then the one additional cost cutting measure would be eliminating air conditioning from the page 2 project. You could say 5 to 7 million. Depending on
We've also talked about, do we, maybe on the bigger number items, how do we go to referendum around those things? Do we separate out some of those things and let the voters decide the trade-offs? The one I'm thinking of particularly is around the middle school. And I don't know the legality of any of this, but do you have where you say, here's the referendum for 122 million, and then, without the second floor on the middle school, and then would you also vote then to add $9 million to add the second floor, but I don't know if those can be separated for referendum or.
You can do multiple, you can do a base question and then have a secretary part of that question asking if they'd also like to do that as well. That's been done before.
I think we'd have to be careful not that they pick the little one and not the big one. It would have to
You
be,
have a base question.
Right, yeah.
And in order for the next question to pass, the base question has to pass.
Right.
Usually that's like hard to pass. It all depends on how you phrase it.
yeah, I'm agreeing with Sue from the standpoint is I think we really owe it to all this, 18 months of work to be able to show that we've explored as many cost savings as we as a group agree are worthwhile without really impacting the success of the project or the outcome of the project. I do think there is some tipping point there where I think if you're not achieving enough with the project, then you're wasting the money you are spending. If you get it to $100 million, but it's not achieving all the benchmarks or the majority of them, and you're really sacrificing then the educational aspects of it, then to me, that's wasting money.
I mean, I agree pretty much with everything you just said, Larry. I think, I won't speak for the committee, I'll speak for myself. I don't think we're necessarily done cutting costs. I just don't know where they're at this point. Like, I don't know that there's much left to be done without, starting to acknowledge that we're not going to meet certain benchmarking standards. And then that's a decision that we have to make, whether or not we're willing to do that. Yeah.
So question for Lisa, on the proposal that includes maintaining the neighborhood schools with the new larger third school. Do all of those include plans? And I think I know the answer to this, for separate gymnasium and cafeteria spaces, which would include new construction at the two existing Blue Point and I know Blue Point does
Just
it.
to be certain, you gotta pull it up.
I think they both do. I just want to confirm that.
Where's our handy dandy?
They essentially show a separate gym and cafeteria, so there is. Yes, they show a separate gym and cafeteria.
For all three K-2s.
All three K-2s.
So then my next question would be for Diane and our school staff. If we ended up in a scenario where we had a gymnasium and cafeteria essentially sharing the same space, but we right-sized them, we made them bigger, could you make it work? I know it's not ideal to have those spaces sharing functionality, but if we're talking about reducing square footage on new construction, and, two of the schools are building new separate cafeterias, that's a place for square footage reduction.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think, what is problematic about that is the limitations that the academic program would continue to have on the use of space, right? So when we think, and I'm looking at Jen because she's one of our primary principals, and so, she experiences that on a daily basis, but I don't think at the primary schools, the problem is that the cafeterias are necessarily undersized to feed the students, like is true at the middle school, right? The problem with the cafeteria, cafanasium, cafetorium, however you want to call it, it is the dual use of the space. That is what is driving the desire to have dedicated cafeteria and dedicated gymnasium.
So what you're saying is no matter the size of that space, if it's still shared functionality, the problems won't be abated.
And it'll become even harder because you're gonna have more classrooms in those larger schools as the enrollment goes up. So
More
that,
students. And that is
that
the
fight
issue.
for space is gonna increase in the next 5 years.
Right.
That's the issue because you're gonna have to hold more phys ed classes during the course of the week. And you'll have a steady number of lunches that have to happen during the course of the week. So booking time in the space is the issue. It's not really that it's dual purpose. It's actually what can happen in that space when. And that's really where the rub is. Right now, at Pleasant Hill, for example, the space is used around the clock. And once per month, actually, I could do it once per week, but once per month on an early release day, we have a special schedule on that day. And so we're able to free up 20 minutes of time when that space is not utilized for phys ed classes or lunches. And that's the only time we can have a whole school meeting. So it's just very tightly scheduled. And when our enrollment increases, that's going to pinch us even further.
Thank you for clarifying.
Lisa, when we get the plans for each concept, will we be getting a detailed line item for each one of those concepts?
That's we haven't gotten the cost estimate yet, but the way it typically comes to us is the cost estimate will have a detailed breakdown of each option and each school within each option.
Will it be by item like 14 doors, 10 windows, or will
Yeah,
it be square
it's,
foot?
no, it'll be quantified.
Feels very late to be asking this, but I am gonna ask. I'm just looking at the diagrams here and how the new additions on both Pleasant Hill and Blue Point kind of add on. And it, you know, physically by diagram looks like almost a pinch point.
Same, and we have the.
Sorry, I have the big handout, the big.
Like where the yellow meets the.
Where the yellow meets the blue. Yeah, it looks like just like long hallway wise. Is there any concern that becomes like a pinch point or like a? I assume emergency exit wise, there's other exits that children could get out of. It would be kind of absolutely or anything, but,
You're talking about that little like connector between the two?
yes.
Yeah, so essentially that is, we have to keep the addition so many feet off the existing building,
Okay.
for code purposes.
Okay.
And so that is literally the hallway that will connect the two, but it's sized the same as any hallway within the school.
Okay.
But there will be, I mean, we can have exits from there, we can have exits within the school. By code, we have to have a certain number of exits, or, you know, for the distance that they have to travel.
Okay, so just the diagram making it look tight. It would be a
makes it look
standard
that way,
size.
but yeah, it's really driven by.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just something that flagged me.
Is there an alternative to Blue Point if the geothermal comes back that it's gonna be expensive?
We did not look at geothermal at the existing.
I don't need geothermal, soil conditions, but the stumps and everything. If the cost
Yeah, I mean, we could,
prohibited from excavating that site and backfilling it, is there an alternative of putting the addition someplace else?
we could put it down where it says potential PK addition. And look at modifying that back area for, you know, the future additions and things like that. We really didn't end up having to be more soil mitigation because of that in the future.
I'm gonna change the subject, so. just wanna make sure.
You also had like a laundry list of things you had in the discussion block too, just to remind you on the agenda.
Oh, yeah, I did. Okay, thank you. I just want to ask one clarifying question back on operating cost discussion. Would it be incorrect to characterize the tax impact as, with the neighborhood school option is $507 approximately for the first 10 years? But the savings realized in our operating costs, right? That's a net savings.
Right.
So my question is, could you characterize then the tax impact of the consolidated school as at $317? essentially, right? So minus that two, I 190 instead of 200, but would that be inaccurate to characterize it that way as, right?
If you're talking about impact to taxpayers, I
Yeah.
think you could, you start to conflate two very important things, but it all boils down to the taxpayer, so. I think it's correct to do that, whether it's advisable is another question.
Right, 'cause
That's
you would
kinda
have
what I
to,
was
you would have
thinking,
to take into consideration when the building opens.
Right.
So I think it's accurate to say that, and my brain thinks that way too, but then you can't do it in the first like 3 years, because those are construction years. So, or, you know, 18
Sure.
months or whatever it is,
Yeah.
but year 5. That's how my brain thinks
Yeah.
is, that's the tax impact, but I'm not also shouldering the operating costs.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Because thank you for the reminder. I
Yeah.
forgot about these things. Just quickly in our last couple of minutes, it is probably worthy of discussion whether we do it in the next 8 minutes or at another meeting, but we need to start thinking about how our process to get down to one option. Dave presented a nice model that's really data-driven. The last time we had to do that, we have the benefit of time now to kind of think about how we maybe incorporate a model like that or do another sticker drill or things like that. I think we need to start to consider that so that we're not the week before or the day of coming up with ideas for how to get down to one option. If people have ideas right now they want to throw out, great. Otherwise, I just want to kind of plant that seed. And we can make it a point of discussion, an agenda item for next week. But
Related to that, I suppose it doesn't really matter because both of the concepts are within $1 million together. So what I was thinking is, does it make sense to select the option first and then have scope reduction discussions, or have scope reduction discussions before?
Oh, I think it matters.
Well, that's why I bring it up. It matters. I just want to make sure we build that sequence into your process.
I think for me personally, I want to see scope reduction, what that's gonna look like in both options. I would be apprehensive to whittle it down to one and then start doing scope reductions.
Yeah.
The other thing too, is I think it's important
Am I-
to get
am I
the
not
information back from the
characterizing
surveys too, from the residents
for sure.
before we start doing that.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about the scope reductions, the deferments on this page. Do they really affect either of the concept options? They don't.
Yeah,
They
really,
really,
the scope reductions are mostly middle school.
or Wentworth.
Oh, I see
or-
what you're saying.
No, and insulation or cooling at K2, I suppose that is specific scope, but in large part, these don't affect the conceptual direction you choose to go.
That's true.
I
just raise it whether it matters what you take up first.
To me, right, as I look at the scope reductions, the one that does, I think would have an impact is the air conditioning, right? I personally, I would, if we build the consolidated school, I would think you build a new school, you put air conditioning on it. But if we're talking about the renovation, that's a different discussion. So that's one where I think which option we go with, to me personally, I'd want to talk about that scope reduction before we choose. The other ones I understand, they're isolated.
Is there any chance that we build the new 380 student school without with air conditioning and not put it in the other two in Pleasant Hill? And
Yeah, I think that's what.
I think we can vote to do any of those things, right? So whether it's
but that might not be accepted by the Board of Ed.
I mean,
The recommendation from the committee will be what it is, and we'll have to hear all the evidence. I mean, I can't speak for what will happen, but
Yeah,
I mean,
and not just BOE, but town council as well.
You gotta get it by.
right, just so that people understand, right, we're making a recommendation. The body, the elected bodies can choose to go with our recommendation, they can choose to modify it, they can choose to throw it away and come up with their own ideas. Those are all in the realm of possible. I don't.
So
I don't think those things, I don't think that will happen, but, right, I mean, at the end of the day, we're doing this to make a recommendation and nothing more. So we can, I think, be as creative as we want in those little things like that.
I think I'd like to see it scope.
The-
Before we decide what school.
The scope,
Scope of work.
oh, the scope reduction, yeah, for sure.
No, he said scope of work.
Yeah,
To
what-
be clear,
The
you want to
estimate.
see the estimate, is that what you mean? Or, yeah.
yeah, so, yeah, okay, thank you. So all I'm saying is, we don't have to make scope reduction decisions today. We don't have to whittle it down to one option today. We need to start thinking about how we are going, what our process to do those will be. And so I'll make that an agenda item for next week with some dedicated time to talk through that. So if you have ideas about how you'd like to come, Dave, I'm looking at you, and your model, please. If you have refreshments to that, refinements, and want to present that, I think we'd love to do it. We'll probably do some small breakout sessions or something like that. So.
Charlie, I might suggest, and maybe this is just to throw it to the group, as regards to the deferments, I would suggest, because these have been so thoroughly developed and discussed, that you organize yourselves such that you walk through each of them, rather than hope or wish that someone brings a motion up. I think it's important to kind of have a discussion and work through them, so there's no kind of open question or dangling wonder what could have happened.
Yeah.
Just so you can be definitive in your final recommendation.
Good recommendation. Okay, anything else for discussion? All right, then I will move to public comment.
Next steps in the public comment.
Oh, next steps, thank
Just
you.
really quick, just.
That's why she's here.
Hey, Charlie.
Recopied this so that you can
Ready.
see what they are, but essentially what is coming up next, but we will add that conversation to the agenda for next week as well. So now.
Wow. Oh, now, yeah.
The microphone.
Oh,
There you go.
Right, Matt Garrett, habitual offender for public comment. I have to say now that my executive session spot has stopped doing trivia on Monday nights, it's become extremely inconvenient at the beginning of the meeting.
You can drink beer without trivia.
They serve soda as well. But one thing, the tax impact chart, I found much more digestible than the first one, because you have the average per year, it's $64 or whatever it is, change per year, and what each one pays per year is. That was certainly helpful, and I have to commend both James and the committee. One for the committee for voting down James's proposal, but two for James. I think that your motion has some substance. I don't think this is the right committee for it. I think the transportation committee would be appropriate. And probably get some better, it'd probably be more warmly received there than it would here. But I think it would be a good addition in conjunction with off-street parking, as opposed to in replacement of off-street parking, because as Jen's already said, there isn't enough parking as it is for Pleasant Hill. Even with the new design with a few more parking spaces, that's only for staff. It's not for anything else. So whether it's 38 spaces or 10 spaces within the boundaries of the property lines of the school, I think would be beneficial to have more parking on or off street. And so for you, I think it should be pursued. I don't think it should be pursued in this situation. So. That's it, I think.
That's all you gotta say about
That's all I gotta say about that.
Anybody online?
Yeah, hey, this is Dave. Sorry, I'm still a member of the public. But just going back to talking about scope reductions and what that looks like, I think I think we as a committee need to, again, continue to educate the public, right? Like, we have nothing really to quantify yet. We're talking about all these huge scope reductions we're targeting, but for the most part, everything's looked at on a square foot basis. We're being really conservative. We're carrying a bunch of contingencies. Right? Ideally, we're coming in heavy. Like, we're trying to be responsible now, so we're not coming back in the middle of the project asking for millions of dollars more of shit we missed, right? Like, we're trying to be responsible on the forefront. And I think if we can communicate that to the public and continue to do that, I think that will go a long way. As far as like getting, specific like VE items, right? Like I don't even think we're carrying like doors, for instance, on like each unit of measurement right now. It's just a square foot basis. So like, we're not even the point where we're like, hey, we have X amount of doors at $3,500 an open, a door. Like, we're not even there yet. So it's really difficult for us to ask Harriman to have their estimator even quantify what the heck we're trying to like get for like deducts. So anyways, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think Lisa's made it clear a number of times that let's wait for the estimate to come back. Those discussions, so you're totally right. Anybody else online? If not, thank you, everybody. Is there a motion to adjourn? Okay.
I just want to make sure, for those of you that haven't picked up a packet, there's about 20 different routes behind you on the table there. Please sign out the routes if you can with your name next to them as to what route you've signed out. Please give me your emails so I can have them, so that I can send you out all of our correspondence as well. So you can post that on your Facebook page. You can give it to your neighbors. You can talk to people around you. We've lost a leader. We've lost a great tool. So we're relying on all of you folks to help us out. There's 20 of us here, and I think I did 20 routes. So we're basically just asking each of you to do 50 houses. If you can do more, that's great. I can get you more flyers because we do have some left over. But this would at least get us to over 1,000 or so people that we're contacting. But the big thing is going to be getting the social media presence out. And all of you are going to be a great help, because the 4 or 5 of us as a committee cannot do it at this point. We're at a crucial stage right now. We really need all of your help to help us out on this. So it would be basically getting those and getting them done. I tried to do it so that you're not driving down Broad Turn Road for an hour, hitting 20 houses. I tried to do it so there were neighborhoods in there so you folks could hit 50 pretty quickly. And we can get you more flyers if need be.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leroy.
You're
That's a lot of
welcome.
work.
Very well
Yeah.
organized.
Yeah, a lot of work done, so appreciate it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?